taste of Korea? Do you know where certain foods come from? Join us in our journey as we uncover where these special foods come from. With Matthew here in the studio for 맛대맛. 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
We're talking all about bread today, and we asked our listeners, what are your favorite types of bread? Mm-hmm. I was going to say genres of bread.
I like action bread. Romance bread.
3412님께서는 빵은 다 맛있어요. 요즘엔 소금빵에 빠져 있답니다. 담백해서 질리지 않아 앉은 자리에서 3개도 먹을 수 있어요.
Sure. Have you been into the whole 소금빵
No, I don't like 소금빵. Wait,
how?
It's just kind of like pretzel-y. And I don't like pretzel flavories type of...
Is it the salt on top?
I
So it's
think
like
so.
the 굵은 소금 on
Yeah.
top. Ah, okay. Well,
Not a big
can't
fan.
really get around that. There are places though that will do like this 소금빵 like sok. So like the whole thing is that like if you never had sogumpang before, it's like a kind of like a roll. On top is like 굵은 소금, and on the inside they'll bake like a whole piece of butter. So there's like a buttery sok.
Oh, is that 앙ბot? Usually...
No. So it's not like 앙버터 where there's like a
thick
whole
slab.
piece
Yeah.
slab. It's baked into the bread. So there's like kind of like a 구멍 inside the bread where there's like melted butter, like remnants of melted butter in there.
Yeah. I don't know. To each his own. But for me, I'm not like that big. But I'll tell you, if I get into something, I could eat like 5, like one whole bag. 프레첼은 빵인가요? 아닌가요?
Yes, it is
Okay.
a bread. Like the soft pretzels are bread. You could even argue that the small crispy pretzels are bread if you start considering crackers bread.
Snacks.
I mean-
건빵 그 크래커도 있잖아요.
Right?
I
Yeah.
love that stuff.
It's so addictive because
It is.
it's perfectly bland.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
like
not too sweet or 짜.
empty calories. You're just consuming so much. 2743님, 크로아상 맛있죠. 최애 빵이랍니다. 근데 크로아상인가요? 크로와상인가요? 크라상인가요? 제과점 브랜드는 크라상이던데. 국립국어원의 정확한 표기는 크루아상이긴 하는데. I don't know. How would you? I mean, even in English as well.
They all sound right to me. Because, especially 외래어 is like is so difficult sometimes. Like to try to turn something into like Hangul sounds.
Yeah. 크로아상.
Croissant.
Yeah, because if you want to do it like croissant sounds more French-ish.
I mean, if you really want, like you don't even really pronounce the R. Croissant.
That's true.
So is it croissant?
아, 그렇죠. 리을을 빼는 건가요? I don't know. Who knows? But in any case, we got another question regarding bread today. 어떤 question일까요?
That's right. So which country has a traditional bread whose special ingredient is tree bark?
Canada. Just because of maple. 어떤 나라에서는 전통빵을 만들 때 특이하게 나무 껍질을 사용한다고 하는데요. 이 나라는 과연 어디일까요?
You also thought Canada because of the beavers too, didn't you?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because they chew apart
mind.
trees.
But also, I mean, Korea eats like namu is just like stuff that's on any. It could be Korea.
Turup is technically a tree. It's not even technically. It is part of the tree. It comes from a tree.
Yeah.
It's the new shoot of a tree.
Yeah, I mean, people eat anything and everything. So, I mean, it's incredible that people who thought of this and found out that hey, I can make bread out of this tree bark and it'd be delicious.
Hunger makes you do just about anything.
That's true. Desperate times. All right. Well, let's talk about bread once again because, it could be pretzels we're talking about. Is that bread or not?
Pretzels, probably. I think all types of pretzels are bread. Some people will argue with me on that.
Right.
Though. But what really is bread? Like it can be made out of anything. It could be made in any way. Apparently, you can you could bury it in the ground for 2 years.
Yeah. So you can even boil it in water. I think there's a lot of bread techniques around the world that maybe that's the reason why we say, that's not bread. You didn't put it in the oven.
Sure.
But everyone's got their own way of putting flour, eggs, butter together and making some sort of bread.
Yeah, you take the simplest ingredients and you can do them in infinite number of ways, including boiling them.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, water is one of the most important ingredients when it comes to bread. I think that's one thing that almost all the definitions will agree on. There, at some point, water comes into the mix.
Yes, it does. And I didn't know this about this particular bread, but one of my friends said, "Oh, I want to make this at home," and I thought, is that something that you can like easily make? Like I just thought like professionals made that.
Sure, and you're dying to say what this next thing is, so
I
you can go
know.
ahead and say it.
We're talking about bagels.
Bagels.
Yeah. Such a huge boom we've seen in one particular, I guess, cafe, bagel shop over in like Gwanghwamun area, and just lines starting from 7 a.m. when they open at 8 a.m. And it's just incredible how much people like bagels in Korea.
Yeah, and I feel like it kind of like it goes like back, and it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah.
Like the trend just slowly grows and
Right.
shrinks back. And now I think we're in another kind of boom period for bagels here in Korea.
Right. Because I do remember like there was a time where if you go to a cafe, everyone had bagels. I don't think they made it. They probably bought it from like a wholesale
Right. I think we all know
market.
which one too.
Yeah. But, and then again, you know, I don't know if it's like clever marketing or like you said, certain 백화점s will have, you know, these fancy bagel shops. And it comes with like a flavor, like when you see ice cream shops, they have all these like buckets and buckets of ice cream. They have buckets of cream cheese. And you're like, wow, who puts bacon and cream cheese together?
Yeah. No, I mean, cream cheese, it's like a blank canvas
It
for
is.
anything you can imagine. And one thing I like about this bagel trend is that just about every trendy bagel place I've gone to, it's trendy because it's actually good. Because I think a bagel is not like the prettiest bang.
Well,
It's really hard to make like a really like 예쁜 bagel. If you
그런가요?
think about it, like right, like
Okay.
it can look delicious.
Yeah.
But it's hard to make like a very delicate, pretty looking bagel.
I guess that is true because, you know, there are places where they have like a rainbow bagel. But then 안 익었을 때는
Sure.
이뻐요. And then you put it in the oven and it gets like all brown. even if there's, you know, food coloring, it's like, it's not a pretty rainbow.
Sure. But yeah, no, I think by and large, I think a bagel has to live and die by how it tastes and that's more important than anything. And I think one of the reasons why bagels are also becoming trendy too is that more and more people are learning how to make them. And it's not complicated, but it is difficult in that it takes a lot of work to get there.
Right.
So you've made bagels before.
I have. And it's a lot of fun, especially if you like do it with kids. Like 체험으로 애들이랑 like 진짜 부엌이 크면
Sure.
if you have like a big kitchen, then it's fun to, you know, get messy, 지저분하게 만들 수 있기 때문에 애들이랑 하면 재미있을 수도 있지만 there's just 한 반나절이 걸려요.
Yes.
And so if you have the time, then you're not going to eat it for breakfast. You're going to have to eat it for lunch, start it in the morning, have it for lunch or dinner. But it's fun because you can, as you said, it's a blank canvas for cream cheese, but even the bagel itself, 저는 onion bagel을 굉장히 좋아해요. But I've never made an onion bagel. There's like plain bagel, 그럼 blueberry 집어넣을 수 있고, 초코 칩 들어갈 수 있고.
뭐 참깨.
그렇죠.
And then they have the everything bagel.
I love that seasoning.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's
It
the best.
is.
And so you say you've made bagels before. Like walk us through it. 그 조리법은 어떻게 되나요?
All right, well, I don't know about the ingredients. 재료는 잘 모르겠지만 일단은 you make the 반죽을 만들어서 이제 모양을 만들죠. 모양을 만들면서 끓인 물에 집어넣어요.
Yes.
You put it in boiling water. So you boil the dough first. 약간 익은 다음에 건져내가지고 또 다시 이제 if you put like all your 뭐 초코칩이나 그런 거를 이제 토핑 위에 집어넣고 이제 오븐에 구우는 거예요.
Right.
And so that would take a few hours. And so you don't want to start when you're hungry.
Yes. There you go. That's exactly it. And you pointed out the most important step, which is, of course, the boiling of the bagels.
I did not know that you boil bagels first. And people say 뉴욕 베이글이 굉장히 유명하잖아요. 그 이유가 뉴욕 수돗물이 맛있대요.
That's what they say about a lot
A
of
little
things made
more
in New York.
saltier, I guess.
So apparently, like the theory is that New York tap water is softer. It's lower in calcium. I think a lot of people have tested this theory out. It's not necessarily true.
Okay.
But the key to making a really good bagel is in that boiling. And one of the reasons why there are so many bad bagels out there is because people cut corners and they discover that you don't have to boil bagels necessarily to get the look. You can do it in a steam oven.
아,
So
다르죠.
it looks like a nice bagel from the outside, but when you boil it, what happens is that you cook the outside slightly. And then once you bake it, that kind of cooked outside becomes crispy and shiny.
Yeah.
But because of the heat from the boiling water, 그 안에 있는 그 가스, 그 차 있는 가스가 부풀어고, so the inside, the gas that's trapped on the inside fluffs up, but it's trapped in there. So it's simultaneously softer yet denser at the same time. It's a very unique texture that you can't get any other way except by boiling.
I wonder if this is true because as you were talking about steaming, I thought one way to maybe test if it was steamed or boiled is that sometimes the bottom of the bagel has like the imprint of the steamer.
Sure.
So maybe, or maybe they could boil it in that way too. But if you boil it, it floats up. So hey, I think I'm onto something. But in any case, we're talking about bagels. Most commercial bagels or bagels outside of New York, you say that use the steam-injected ovens instead of boiling too.
Right. And so that's one of the reasons why New York is renowned for its bagels. It's because it's known for its bagels. So there are people who are out there buying bagels. So bagels are popular. So for them, it's worth it to put in that extra labor cost. And it does take a lot of extra cost to make a proper bagel versus just tossing them in a steam-injected oven. It's you did it one afternoon. You did like a dozen bagels, 2 dozen bagels.
Right.
Imagine having to do 500 bagels per day.
그러니까요.
You have to fish each and every one of those bagels out of the water one by one. It takes a lot of work. That work is money. And it just doesn't make sense to do a proper bagel in a town where you aren't going to be selling 500 bagels a day.
Yeah, that is true. But I mean, that also is the case for like pizza as well. Pizza 그 도우도 굉장히 중요하잖아요.
그 반죽이, like some of these places, they take it to the extreme. They'll proof their dough for 72 hours straight, and then you look at their kitchens and it's just floor to ceiling, wall to wall, just boxes of dough that's being proofed.
Right, and the temp 온도도 뭐 몇 도여야 되고.
And so I think people are discovering this, and it's one of the reasons why you're starting to get good bagel places in here in Korea. California was notorious for having bad pizza and bagels back in like the 90s and 2000s. And because of this, actually, it's one of the reasons why you're starting to find some of the United States' like best bagels coming out of California now.
Oh, really?
Because it's such a foodie state. And they realize like, oh, there is no real secret to it. You just have to make them properly.
Right.
And so you're starting to see bagels come out of just about everywhere. And interestingly enough, so if you know anything about bagels, you'll know that they're traditionally, made by Jewish immigrants.
Right.
And they're a pretty young food. And most of these Jews, they came from Poland. Fleeing, was it during the diaspora, fleeing the Holocaust. What's interesting is that because so many of the Jewish bakers, they were no longer in Poland after the Holocaust. Poland didn't really have bagels.
Oh.
They evolved out of a different bread once they came to the United States.
Oh.
And so they, in a weird way, went back to Poland in the 90s as in the form of like a New York brunch.
Interesting. But it's actually, I guess it comes from a variation of some Polish bread.
Right. And that was done by the Jewish community in Poland, who then,
Brought it back. There you go. Well, it's interesting. It's also, it just goes to show how Americans do everything better. Just kidding. Just jokes here. 4796님께서 제가 제일 좋아하는 빵은 맘모스 빵입니다. 어릴 적 30년도 전에 아버지가 월급을 받으시면 그 빵을 사오곤 했었죠. 저는 누나가 3명이 있는데 안타깝게도 누나들은 빵, 테두리만 먹곤 했죠. 저는 잼이 가득한 가운데를 먹었는데요. 물론 지금은 누나들에게 그만큼 잘한답니다. 맘모스 빵 최고예요! 라고 하시는데 테두리가 그 크러스트인가요? 그런가?
I think so. Yeah.
When it 가득한, yeah. I mean, I don't like the crust at all. So I'm not a crust person.
For me, I love all parts of the bread. I eat the crust off pizza. Just about every part of it, whether it be the 속 or the edges.
Yeah.
For me, I find something to love on every piece of bread.
아, 이가 마모스 빵이군요. 몰랐어요. I didn't know what kind of bread this was, but Wow. Yeah, it does look delicious. It looks like something kids would love.
Oh, yeah.
Well, in any case, we're talking about bagels and bread and so much more. Let's take a look at our question once again. 어떤 나라에서는 전통빵을 만들 때 특이하게 나무 껍질을 사용한다고 하는데요. 이 나라는 어디일까요?
That's right. Which country has a traditional bread whose special ingredient is tree bark?
Let us know if you have your own guesses. 정답을 아시는 분들은 샵 1013 단문 50원, 장문 100원 보내주시길 바랍니다. Here's Sumin and Zion T, 크림빵. We're talking about 빵 here, 크림빵 with Sumin and Zion T. There's so much to talk about with bread. And like in the beginning, I was talking about, we can rule out Asia, but, you know, naan and paratha and roti. I mean, in Mexico, come on now.
Right.
Is flatbread not bread?
It's in the name.
It's in the name. So we go down to Mexico now, and we talk about tortillas.
That's right. And when you look online, like I felt so silly going like the Korean like online like encyclopedias and like looking up what a tortilla is.
Right.
But because I wanted to see if in the definitions like online in Korea if they called it a bang, and they do indeed call it a bang or like a flatbread in some cases. But most definitions in Korea still consider a tortilla a bang.
Okay, now here is also a controversial question dating back to like biblical times. Is it leavened or unleavened?
This is unleavened. Tortillas are like the corn tortillas. It has no raising agent, so it has no yeast or baking soda or baking powder in there.
Okay.
So it is an unleavened bread. So yeah, I guess you could have it on Passover if there's no lard in it.
Yeah, there you go. So even if it is unleavened, it's still bread.
It's still bread.
Okay.
Yeah, like I think with flatbreads too. I think a lot of breads as well. Like you'll have ones that are like folded in many layers.
Yeah.
You know, with like oil in between them.
Right.
And so this is definitely considered a bread. But maybe could we consider it a pea?
그러니까 like 만두피.
Like mandupi, because it's a wrap, right?
It is.
Like it's a food that you wrap over, and it's thin.
I was just thinking of mandu, but I'm like, no, that's different, right? 근데 like 찐빵 같은 경우에도 it's just a very 두꺼운 만두, right? Or no, I don't know.
Yeah, because like what's like where's the dividing line between like a 왕만두 and like a 찐빵?
Yeah, what is the difference?
Yeah, I think it's all about context.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so we talk about pancake. We talked about pancakes. I mean, in Korea, we say like kimchi pancakes. Then is chon.
A tortilla. You laugh, but like you could make the argument that like a chan or 빈대떡 is a type of bread if we're considering other things as type of bread. I wouldn't necessarily go that far.
Yeah.
I would argue though that maybe 빈대떡 is a pie.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like that. What is it? The ratio of how much flour
Right.
is in there compared to like the other ingredients? I don't know. Either way, it's all really good. But perhaps we can add to the definition of bread, generally eaten as a part of a meal, but usually not a complete dish.
Yeah, which includes like the vegetables or proteins. I think that's again like all the other aspects of the definition. It's not 100% complete. Because you can have certain breads that have like proteins and vegetables in them.
Right.
You'll have like 치즈빵 and things like that.
소세지빵.
And I've definitely eaten 소세지빵 as a whole meal myself. Several of them, but not just one.
That's true. But I mean, like for tortillas too, it could be like corn tortillas.
Right. And and one other kind of language thing I want to bring up when talking about tortillas is so tortillas are made from corn. They process it by nixtamalization. But one thing that you have to know is that corn, it's called like 옥수수 가루, which is the same 가루 that you find in 밀가루, so like wheat flour. However, you can't call cornmeal corn flour because corn flour is what the British call corn starch.
This is too confusing.
It's very, very confusing. All delicious, but very, very confusing.
Yeah. Well, going back to our question, this particular country is very interesting. 어떤 나라에서는 전통빵을 만들 때 특이하게 나무 껍질을 사용한다고 하는데요. 이 나라는 과연 어딜까요? Drumroll, please.
Finland and Sweden.
Whoa, Europe, Finland and Sweden이에요.
Yeah, so it's a type of bread that's made by the indigenous people, the Sami.
Okay.
And there they use tree bark as part of a specific kind of traditional bread called, I have no idea how to pronounce this, so I'm just going to go phonetically, pt.2.
Okay.
And so they'll forage these local trees and they'll kind of strip the bark off and make a flour out of them. And you can have up to 50% this tree bark flour, but at that point it starts really tasting like a tree apparently.
Is it like bitter?
It tastes like wood, essentially. Like the more you add.
나무 맛. Just 원목 맛.
I mean, they say that like a nice oaky wine or whiskey is nice, so maybe oaky bread.
I guess that's more from the barrel than an actual. I don't know. Well, in any case, interesting enough, this bread comes from Finland. I guess the Scandinavian countries are quite interesting. Well, in any case, 맛대맛 매튜님 너무 재밌었습니다. Thank you again. We'll have to see you again next week.
See you then.
We'll leave you guys with our very last song. 마무리할 시간이 왔는데요.